Chapter 4: Captains of Industry and Erudition, University Builders from 1880 to 1910. A review by Philip Heasley. This presentation will review the fourth chapter of Thielen's book. As I proceed, I will try to make the overall themes clear, but also try to keep you mildly interested. We will begin by discussing the primary themes Thielen interweaves into his discussion of this era. In particular, we will focus on the major figures and parties that influenced education during this period, which Thielen calls the captains of erudition. We will look closely at the University of Chicago as a case study of these themes in action, and we will look at a range of other types of universities and how they developed over this period. Though Thielen's work is often more descriptive than thematic, it is possible to identify some themes he focuses on in his discussion of this period. These include an increased role for industry and philanthropy in higher education, a growing emphasis on publicity and fundraising as colleges began to compete with one another and became seen as emblems of their community, the continued effort to develop colleges that were for the public good through funding state universities, often through further land grants, and finally a crystallization of the shape and structure of an American university. Thielen refers to this period as the era of the university builders. Most important among these were wealthy philanthropists who made huge contributions to colleges. This was the historical period of the captains of industry who made vast fortunes in the industrial era through large-scale ventures in coal, steel, railroads, and printing. Thielen cites Thorstein Veblen, who sarcastically names these figures the captains of erudition because of the large sums of money they donate to higher education. Thielen calls this the age of giving, in which gifts and bequests increased fivefold, and the percentage of gifts going to universities increased as well. In addition to generous donors, ambitious university presidents and fundraisers did their best to attract that money to the university and spend it to make their university attractive. Finally, we see continued support from religious organizations and government that has been present since the beginning of American higher education. Unsurprisingly, many of our modern universities are named after their benefactors from this period. As early as 1876, millionaire banker Johns Hopkins donated $7 million to found the university and hospital that bear his name, the largest gift ever seen in the U.S. at that time. Other wealthy Americans were overtaken by this spirit of giving, and like Hopkins, saw their wealth as a public trust that could be used for good works and the public good. Along with this increase in giving came the first specialists dedicated to university fundraising. Both former ministers, money raisers like Frederick Gates and Holland McIntyre, put their evangelical skills to use on fishing expeditions to land the biggest donors, or trout as they called them. A potential victim almost ready to donate was often said to be big with gift. Work continuously, rapidly, and at a hot pace. Canvass every day and all day, moving rapidly from man to man, rain or shine. Read nothing, write of nothing, think of nothing, so long as your canvass continues. Frederick Gates, 1890. Ambitious university presidents also were eager to find new ways to attract and to spend this influx of money. According to Thielen, many university presidents became a type of celebrity who served on the local school board, hobnobbed with the rich and famous, and published on current events in national periodicals. The prototype for this may have been William Rainey Harper. Handpicked by John Rockefeller after he donated $12 million to found the University of Chicago, Rainey was a child prodigy and tireless scholar and promoter. Locals referred to him as Chicago's young man in a hurry, and referred to the new university as Harper's Bazaar. According to Thielen, Harper was reported to have been working even on his deathbed, and turned his funeral into a fundraiser, instructing faculty to march in full academic regalia. As both wealthy donors, religious organizations, and governments gave funds to universities, the reputation of the university and its benefactors became increasingly intertwined. Hence, a much greater emphasis was placed on the public image of the university. This leads to changes in hiring and academic practices, but more noticeably to a boom in beautification projects through campus architecture. Phoebe Anderson Hearst, heir to the Hearst publishing fortune, offered $80,000 in a competition for the best design of the new University of California to make it the Athens of the West. And Thielen argues that universities around the country caught the fever of the campus beautiful. Every little feature of the little American college seemed all the more sordid, but I began by consoling myself by building air castles, with distinguished professors in every field, libraries as rich as the Bodleian, halls as lordly as Christ Church or of Trinity. I was constantly rearing these structures on that queenly site above the finest of New York lakes, and dreaming of a university worthy of the Commonwealth and of the nation. Andrew White, first president of Cornell. Thielen devotes quite a bit of attention to the University of Chicago as a case study in the themes of this period. The university was originally founded by industry giant John D. Rockefeller, who eventually donated over $35 million to the project. Local merchants like Marshall Field also donated lands and funds. The opening of the university was timed to coincide with a large tourist event called the Columbian Exposition. An important driver of the boom in campus architecture was the growth of photography and printing. Weekly and monthly magazines often published features on universities, including photos and illustrations of the new campuses. Postcard printers sold images not just of the exposition, but also of the gray city of the University of Chicago. As Rockefeller poured money into the university, President William Rainey Harper found creative ways to spend it, by creating an elaborate academic bureaucracy, beginning the prototype college athletics department by building an enormous football stadium and hiring away Amos Stagg, the famous football coach at Yale. Most notably, Harper raided the faculty at struggling Clark University, hiring their best and brightest to work at Chicago. Thielen devotes a good deal of the chapter to the notion of the great American universities. Certain universities were becoming seen as the role models for other American universities. Many of these included the 14 founding members of the American Association of American Universities, and the 14 universities included in Edwin Slosson's book, Great American Universities. Though Slosson cut Catholic University and Clark University, whose status had fallen in the previous decade, the other 12 members stay consistent. Thielen analyzes these institutions to identify the key features they shared which other universities would aspire to during the period. These include a source of philanthropy on a large scale, an active presence of the president of the university, the role of professors as professional experts, a novel pedagogy, professional schools, a systematic curriculum, the professionalization of students, facilities, and the dynamics of the educational enterprise. In addition to the great universities, Thielen also describes the continued growth of colleges funded by government and religion. The initial land grants in the Morrill Act were continued with further grants from 1887 to 1914. Importantly, there were now funds for two groups excluded before, state universities and black universities in the South, which had not been eligible during the Civil War. Though black universities originally received quite a bit of funding from government and philanthropy during this period, this funding eventually shifted to the all-white flagship universities of the southern states. Thielen also discusses the further influence of progressive ideals on higher education. For instance, the University of Wisconsin was famous for its attempt to send a state to college because of its strong outreach program and its emphasis on applied sciences. Because it was situated in the state capital of Madison, it became a model system for providing educated, responsible experts to fill the state's civil service. Similarly, the University of California followed this progressive agenda by using state funds to make the university tuition-free. Finally, Thielen discusses the increasing Catholic colleges. While most of the new state universities were founded in small rural college towns, a new wave of Catholic universities were founded in the heart of large cities, which were filled with populations of Catholic immigrants from Ireland, Italy, and Eastern Europe. Though enrollment increased during this period for women, they still faced many hurdles in furthering their education. While famous colleges like Stanford and Chicago were committed to co-education, women who did become educated were often tracked into specific majors like teaching and home economics. Further, women who did receive advanced degrees often faced outright discrimination when applying for work. During this period, many women made important contributions to research and education. For instance, Agnes Faye Morgan conducted important research on vitamins and nutrition, but her work to build home economics into a scientific field was consistently obstructed by deans and presidents. Many women during this period worked to mitigate the hostility and isolation they encountered by forming tight-knit protege chains and establishing organizations like the Association of American University Women, founded in 1881. Though Chapter 4 only covers a relatively small period of time, from 1880 to 1910, from Thielen's perspective, these years are particularly formative in creating the shape of our modern higher education system. Thielen argues that the ideal of the American university really begins to coalesce around the central tenets of a reliable source of funding, from philanthropy, government, or religion, a noble mission of education for the public good, respected faculty, and a beautiful campus. Much of this change also came about as universities increasingly began to compete for funds through improving their image. As Thielen notes, the new 3 R's of higher education had become ratings, rankings, and reputations.